how good is Oregon, and what is their ceiling for this year?
I think through the first 2 weeks, because I was on the hype train, Dukes, from the jump. I was saying they have one of the best rosters in America. I was saying put them up there with the Ohio States and the Georgias. And then they go out there and look pretty lackluster against Idaho. And you say, hey, it's week one, transfer quarterback trying to put it together. You kind of see more of the same in week two. So to see them look how they're supposed to look in week three against Oregon State, I'm definitely buying stock still. I still think they have their best football in front of them, which is encouraging because you got to have Ohio State come to town in October. I still think they're a national title contender. And I know it's early in the year. I know they haven't looked the part just yet, but to me, the thought is like this roster, once it gels and once it really starts firing all cylinders when they need to, they're going to be tough to beat. I think Dylan Gabriel, the thing with him too is as he gets more comfortable in the system and the chemistry with his receivers builds and all those things, like Bo Nix was so effective in this offense because he was hardly ever sacked. Like he caught the ball, it's out of his hands in like, a millisecond. Like he was sacked 10 times over 2 years. Dylan Gabriel through those first 2 games had 7 sacks. So I think as he gets more comfortable with where to go with the football, even before the play happens, they're going to really start cooking, in my opinion. So I like Oregon. I think they're a national title contender.
All right, so this summer, Oregon had a really hot streak where they were cooking. You get the guy like DeCorian Moore, you get my man Trey McNutt, you get a lot of other players that you may not have thought that they were in the league for. But now it's been a little bit quiet in Eugene. So recruiting wise, what do you think that Oregon has to do on the field in order for them to close on some of their top targets? Because they have a few other 5 stars that are going to visit. One being Naeem Offord, who's a cornerback committed, 5-star committed to Ohio State that Auburn's after, but he definitely is adamant about taking this trip to Oregon. If you're Oregon, what product are you trying to put on the field in order to sell a guy like Naeem Offord?
I think if you're Oregon, you just want to validate what everyone already believes is true about what Dan Lanning has going on out there. I mean, Dukes, you and I talked about this a couple of weeks to maybe a couple months ago before the season even started. And it's like, you get me out there and get a photo shoot, and I get to wear those unis, and I get to see Otzi, and then I get to, experience the Nike Palace that is Oregon. Like, I'm already feeling pretty good about seeing myself at Oregon. But when they have that product to match it on the field, that is physical on the line of scrimmage, that is high flying offensively. I think that in itself is what we've come to expect from Oregon under Dan Lanning, but to see it continue with all these new pieces, like we mentioned, Bo Nix isn't there anymore. Evan Stewart has transferred in. Want to see him have success like you expect to have him have success. Want to see that same attitude on defense. Like, I think Oregon, and we've said this for a while, I think they've sort of been a Big Ten team before they got to the Big Ten, play great in the trenches, have a physical mentality and fly around to the football on defense. I just want to see some continuity there to where if I'm a recruit, if I am a Naeem Offord, I know that, okay, this is a sustainable product under Dan Lanning. It wasn't a thing where they had a good 2-year stretch because Bo Nix was there. It's like, no, this is who Oregon is. And I think verifying their identity is kind of that next phase in terms of bringing some of that top talent to Eugene.
When we talk about verifying identities and who a program is or who a team is, when we think of Oregon, we think finesse, we think fast, we think fly, we think cool, we think everything that goes along with a explosive Pac-12 team of yesteryear. Now they're in the Big Ten, and the top teams in the Big Ten always find out a way to beat trench bullies. Last year, Mason Graham at Michigan. You look at the long line of defensive linemen that came out of Ohio State when they were really good. What does Oregon need to do in order to become one of those trench bully type schools when it comes to recruiting?
I think seeing where Dan Lanning comes from in the coaching tree department, if I'm an Oregon fan, is encouraging. What I say a lot is like you can't change where you're from as a coach, not just geographically, but in terms of who you've coached under. And him coming from the Nick Saban tree, from the Kirby Smart tree, I have to believe that the emphasis in those meeting rooms is, hey, we need to get big human beings that can move the opposition against their will, which sounds sort of simple, Dukes, but like I truly believe that football is a simple game that is made complex by unintelligent people. Like Dan Lanning's a smart guy, and we had him on the show, I want to say a couple of maybe 2 seasons ago after his first year at Oregon, and he was straight up with us. He's like, listen, it's not a secret. Like, you want to win, you got to win up front. And so I think he understands that. To me, it's just a matter of continuing to prove to these kids that, hey, if you come to Oregon, you will get developed, you'll get drafted at a high level. Because I think that's the pitch that you could make if you're an Ohio State or if you're a Michigan or if you're any number of those schools in the Big Ten is we have this resume here that speaks to what will happen if you come play for us and come play defensive line for us at Ohio State, at Michigan. You mentioned Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. They'll both be, I would imagine, first round, if not top 3 round picks, depending on what the NFL thinks of them. And so I think now for Oregon to make the, a long-winded point concise, it's about proving like you come to Oregon, you will get to where you want to go. And I think they're in the process of doing that with the guys they have up front right now, from a Jordan Birch to a Derek Harmon who transferred in, from a Mateo Uyunglele. I think they're well on their way.